sit over here because I assumed Phil was
Um,
going to show up.
GTV, we're ready to start. 10 seconds and counting.
No, I don't
Unless you play with Legos yourself.
Oh my gosh. I got a whole
Do you?
box for my son.
Okay, folks. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our regularly scheduled planning board meeting for Thursday, January 13th, 2022. As usual, we begin with introductions, and I will begin at Dave Pierce's end of the table.
Yes, I'm still Dave Pierce, thank you. An alternate member here.
I'm Jim Raymond.
Barbara Griffin?
Karen Hughes?
Tim Redmond.
Gayla Breck, alternate and recording secretary.
Collis Adams, Select Board Representative.
Joanne Duffy, Planning and Economic Development Director.
And in the audience, we have?
Eric Josephson, engineering.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, everyone else. We are going to switch our agenda slightly tonight. We have the first item on our agenda would have been the 2022 proposed zoning amendments. We're going to move that to the end of the agenda, and we're going to do old business first. Prior to that, we're going to begin with some action items. We have the minutes of December 9th, 2021 and 16th, 2021. So we'll take them independently of each other. So the minutes of December 9th, do I have a motion or changes or corrections?
I move we approve, adopt, whatever the verb is.
Motion by Jim Raymond to approve,
I'll second.
second by Karen Hughes. Any discussion on the motion?
Am I allowed to vote?
Yeah, I guess we have two members missing tonight. We have Kimberly and we have Phil missing at this time, so I'll
I don't
have both
believe I
you.
can vote, I'm gonna have to abstain, I don't believe I was at that meeting. December 9th?
That's still a vote. Abstain
You were
is a
there,
vote. You can
Carlos.
still
I
vote,
was
just
like,
abstain.
I haven't voted.
So in Kimberly and Phil's stead, Dave Pierce and Gail will be voting tonight
Thank you.
unless Phil arrives, and then we'll switch one of you off. So, minutes of December 9th have been motioned and seconded to accept as presented. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. We now have the minutes of December 16th, 2021.
I'll move we approve.
Jim Raymond's motion to
You weren't
approve,
at that one.
I'll second.
seconded by Karen again. Any changes or corrections? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
I'll abstain, that was the one I was.
We have one,
I think I was there, was it?
No.
Yeah,
we have two abstentions.
No, you missed the fun one.
It was someone.
that was the last one.
I missed you.
So we have our two abstentions, so the motion passes. The new business item that was on the agenda for tonight has asked for an extension. Joanne, could you please give the rundown on that?
Yes, the applicant did not submit all of the appropriate paperwork, and unfortunately, the surveyors in his office were down with COVID, so he wasn't able to get everything back to us in time. So he's asked to be continued to the next meeting, which is January 27th.
Anybody have any questions for staff? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion for the continuance.
So moved.
Second.
Karen has moved,
Second.
and Collis Adams seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Joanne, the next one is a cash surety from the Sports Dome.
Yep, that would be Eric, and you should have a memo at your table in front of you that's dated today, dated January 12th from Eric regarding this.
Now, Eric, could you come up to the table, please?
This one.
So would you kindly go through the request and brief, if you would, please?
Servino Trucking gave us a call. They're planning to finish up the sports dome and request a CO at the end of the month. So I met them out there to see the status of the project, also reviewed the third-party engineer reports. So all the drainage is in and stabilized. The parking lot is all base pavement, but because of winter conditions, they still have landscaping to do, top asphalt, And once they retop, they'll have to restripe. And they have a couple sidewalks that they put in as temporary winter binder, still at ADA compliance, but they're seeking their CO, so they created a bond, and they're just trying to get surety in place.
Do they have temporary striping for the handicap spots?
They do,
Okay, good.
yep.
Jim?
Question, when we establish bonds, they gave us a quote, but if it's to secure their performance, the cost would arguably be more than the quote we got. So is it appropriate to use this amount for the bond, or should it be some adjusted amount to give us a cushion if we have to use somebody else to complete it? 'Cause that's the purpose of the bond.
Yeah, correct. I would assume that these numbers would have, I looked at the tonnage asphalt, the costs that they would, and compared it to our Continental town price, let's say. And it was comparable, it was actually slightly higher than our town price. And the other numbers looked within line that we could probably find a contractor for if needed. So I believe it's kind of a competitive number with others that I've seen.
Was there a contingency? Was there a contingency? I'm sorry. In the estimate?
They did not include a contingency in the estimate, no.
However, they cannot get a CO with this outstanding, so this would all need to be,
That's not, that's not.
I'm sorry, they are getting a CO.
Yeah, that's the whole
This is
point of
taking
doing this,
place,
is to
that's
get a
right,
CO.
that's
So I
right.
guess the question.
So let's go back to past practices. Has this been our past practice, Eric, that we accept an amount number from a contractor and you review it and you find that it's adequate? Is that how we've done it in the
Yeah,
past?
yes, that is correct.
So if we are going to be looking at Jim's statement, I think we need to move forward on future requests so as we don't turn this one into a problem. Jim?
Well, I think if we waive, if we approve this, we can add as condition, we're not waiving any of these as a condition of site plan, so if they don't complete them, we can revoke site plan approval. But it has, we've approved the plan, but not final inspections, so subject to completion of these, if that's correct.
You're correct, yeah. Springtime, they will complete all the landscaping and any remaining items.
So where it is a site plan approval, I think we still have some.
Well, I would ask a question about that, Jim. Have we ever revoked a site plan in the history of this board and asked the people to leave the premises
We
or
haven't.
close them down?
I don't know. I don't remember.
This doesn't sound like anything I remember in my time.
We have threatened, that usually gets their attention. And on a project, like a commercial project where there are not tenants, it's a better threat. It doesn't work on a subdivision or apartment building, you're right.
I would just wanna caution that we have, the remedy is to revoke the site plan because we won't have enough lawyer money to fill that job out in court.
Well, lawyers are cheap.
Okay. So, I concur with your statement that future approvals for requests for funds, I think you should consider having some other amount built into it to ensure that it would be done.
Okay.
Okay?
Like an additional 10%?
I know,
or
something.
Something, okay.
Our
Because,
regulations are pretty specific about this.
well, we all know that prices for everything change from week to week.
Why don't we ask planning to take a look at it and see if the
Yeah, for-
regulations
for- for the
constrain what
future.
we're able to do in this regard?
I concur, Barbara.
Okay. Right.
So, with,
And personally, I think any construction estimate should have a contingency, especially in this day and age with supply chain issues and whatnot. To quote a number and expect it to come in like that is not realistic. That's my recommendation.
I can say this much, in my experience, this is not the kind of company that walks away from this job.
No, I know the company.
We are-
But the
but I'm
biggest,
just
a
saying-
big chunk of this is landscaping,
Right.
okay? And that landscaping stock,
Well, once again, Severino's not gonna walk away from this site, so I would feel comfortable with their estimate, Jim. However, I concur with your statement. All right, so, do I have a motion for this, request for a cash surety from someone?
Based on Eric's presentation, I'll move that we approve the surety. We're not waiving any these items though as a condition of site plan.
So the motion's made by Jim, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Barbara. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
I'll vote yes, but, note my reluctance
Okay.
because of the lack of a contingency.
Any opposition or abstentions? Seeing none, motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Okay, so we are going to change our agenda for this evening and take old business before the zoning amendments. So I would invite the applicant to come up to the table. And Joanne, could you please, excuse me, could you please give a very brief rundown of where we are?
Yes, so. So new plans were submitted for this site plan on January 3rd. The applicant did address the comments that Eric had brought up at the last meeting. They've also, on the page, on the first sheet, the cover sheet, they also did include the DPW conditions of approval as well as the fire department's recommendations. So those are now there on the plan. They're asking for two waivers. One, as was discussed at the previous meeting, was for the driveway grade at 17% where 10% is required, and that was explained at the last meeting why it is needed. And the second was the request that the board had made, that they provide a written waiver from sections 2B1 and 2B2 of the development regulations, requesting waiver of the actual public hearing. And that was also submitted in writing. So we're basically at the same place as we were as far as the staff's recommendations, that there's no regional impact and that the waivers be approved as requested. What I did was, under the staff recommendations, I've listed the conditions of approval that were included the last time, and I also included the original conditions, being that this is just an amendment to the original plan. I wanted to make sure that those did not get lost along the way, so those are also included under the recommended conditions.
Does anyone have any questions for staff? Okay, members, everybody sat at the table? Okay, so I will recognize Doug, and please identify yourself for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, my name is Doug McGuire, and I am with the Dubay Group, representing the applicant, the property owners.
I'd like to deal with the waivers first, if the board members concur. So Doug, could you tell us about the first waiver you're asking for?
Sure. So the first one we talked a little bit about at the previous hearing. It was a request for the driveway grade of the emergency access. This was deemed necessary because of some improvements that were done subsequent to the approval on East Union Street. Based on doing some drainage improvements and realigning the road a little bit, it ended up raising the elevation by approximately 4 feet, and so therefore the grade of 10% was not feasible. We've been working with staff and the fire department to adjust it to make sure that the ladder trucks can be accommodated, the largest vehicle, and despite a 17% grade, based on how we did the approach curves and the exiting curves of the drive, it does work. And so therefore, we're requesting the waiver so that we can maintain that as an emergency-only access.
Thank you. Joanne, could you please make sure that the fire department comments regarding this is read into the record? Could you read them for us, please? They're on page 6 of the staff report.
Number one is recommend recommend the approval is site and condition specific and does not constitute a reference or standard for any other site. Number 2, the Factory Street entrance from Main Street into the site and through the parking lot must be and remain accessible to Tower 1 in all weather conditions and in both directions. If changes to Factory Street impede access by Tower 1, any waivers of the East Union Street access road will be terminated.
Okay, so you, as the representatives, understand those and agree to them?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, good. Board members,
Question.
go ahead.
This looks pretty much exactly like what was, I was not at the last meeting. I didn't look at the tape. I read the minutes. But this, first of all, looks pretty much like exactly the same thing they said last month about this. And I guess, why would we even need these comments? Because accessibility is a condition of the site plan approval. We've determined that they can access it through the grade, which is a problem created by the town. And so, why do we even need any further conditions? Now
Well,
that
we need a waiver because it does
Oh,
not.
because
meet
of the grade.
Because of the grade requirement.
But we don't need the,
Well, these were what they negotiated. They negotiated these terms with the fire department as part of this redesign of the ramp.
I understand that, and that's fine. All I'm saying is, my position is we need to, if we grant the waiver, we're granting it for it as it is, and, I mean, I get it, I want to give them the waiver on this, but I'm not, it seems that they're able to provide the access to the truck. The condition was created by town action, and, you know, they've met the requirements, so, and nothing has changed since the December meeting, so.
Okay, Jim?
Well, I don't want to argue with Barbara because I'll lose, but, yeah.
No, you'll just all be here all night.
Yeah. But I think we need these for a few reasons. One, that when the town acts, the town is entitled to act. It's the sovereign. So we don't want to create a entitlement on applicants to say, well, the town created that problem, therefore we don't have to meet their standards. This is an unusual situation, and I want that clear in the record. And second, the original application was granted on condition of this emergency access, and it was material to our allowance of it. So I think it's important that the condition number 2 be there for that purpose. Now, in fact, I don't think it shouldn't be an issue, but I think on both it is important to have these.
Okay. Any other board members?
Barbara and I will argue about this afterwards in the parking lot.
Before we proceed, Kimberly is now in the audience. Could you please identify yourself for the record like everyone else did?
Yes, I'm Kimberly Peace. My apologies for being late.
No problem. And Gail, would you step
problem.
back so Kimberly can vote? Thank you. So Kimberly is now voting on this application. So if any other issues with the driveway grade, otherwise I'll ask for a motion.
Motion to approve incorporating fire department comments reluctantly.
Okay, we have reluctant motion. Does anyone else want to second the reluctant motion?
And I'll second on condition we include their comments enthusiastically.
So we have one reluctant and one enthusiastic. That balances
Those
it
two
out.
efforts can cancel each other out, so they stay out.
There you
Any discussion on the motion from board members? Seeing none, I'll ask for a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? It passes. Second waiver is a public hearing waiver request, and I believe at our prior meeting, Jim made a motion to include all of the comments from the discussion into the record, so therefore, we don't have to rehash the whole application all over again. Okay, so Joanne, could you give us an understanding of why they're asking for this?
So I believe at the last meeting, they stated that they did not believe that it really needed a public hearing because the changes that they were making were more suited to the buildings themselves versus the site. But there is a waiver, I don't want to put words in their mouth, there is a waiver, a written waiver, which their answer to that question is The proposed plan amendments are primarily related to adjustments associated with the building architectural design and implementation of underground parking. Overall site layout and unit density remain unchanged, and therefore a public hearing is not necessary for these minor site plan changes. Thank you for your consideration.
Okay. And in the prior meeting, I mentioned about the enlarged outdoor meeting area. The applicant addressed my concerns about noise traveling over the river. We will talk about that later, but that did come up as probably one of the few things that a public hearing would have been considered. But based on their statements, which I'll bring up later in the meeting, I'm content to be happy with this request. Any board members want to discuss the request? I should have asked Doug, do you have anything to say other than what was read out of your memorandum?
Nope.
Good, I like that. Anything else from board members? Seeing none, I'll look for a motion.
I make a motion that we find that the waiver will not affect the purpose and intent of these regulations because of the nature of the changes proposed, and therefore we approve the waiver request for a public hearing.
Motion's been made by Jim enthusiastically. Do I have a second? Second by Dave Pierce.
And I have one enthusiasm in a meeting, I used it up.
That's the one we adjourn?
Yeah.
Okay, any discussion on Jim's motion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of granting the request for a public hearing waiver, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. So we are on to the application itself. Are there any items that we need to discuss further, Joanne?
No, that would be it.
Okay, I have something I'd like to bring up. I asked about the noise going over the river. And I went, the applicant from SMG, I'm sorry, I don't remember your name, sir.
Bob Simon?
Bob, stated that they have on-site managers, and should any complaints come up, they will deal with it internally and they'll take care of the problem. And the reason stated that they felt that there was no noise was going to make it over the river was because of the vegetative barrier. Am I partially correct in what you said? Good.
That sounds appropriate.
So I went to the plan, site plan sheet 5 of 21, Doug, and I was looking at where the tree line is on sheet 5 of 21. And I noticed that you highlight all of the trees and the brush and provides the vegetative barrier. You have a statement on your plan that says, under the direction of an arborist, remove dead trees and scrub, limb up healthy trees, remove all non-native invasive plants, which is pretty much the block on most of them, if not all of them. When would you feel it's appropriate to mark trees that you consider dead or needing to be removed, mark trees that need to be limbed up, and sort of generally note for observance purposes where those would be?
Well, we talk about those areas more specifically on the landscaping plan as well
Okay.
within the set. And so, I mean, obviously, these areas, there are small areas that are necessary to be cleared for site improvement purposes, like where the outfalls are. So those ones we would have to do probably right away upon original demo of the site and just opening that tree line area up. But I think it would be more of a, whenever the applicant feels that it's appropriate, obviously if there's any trees that need to come down that would be a hindrance to the building construction or anything, or would cause a problem by taking them down later, they would likely do that first.
What I was hoping to avoid I was hoping that the answer would be something along the line of we would mark all the trees first before the project really gets going. Have your arborist go through the site, mark the trees that you deem necessary for, say, removal, or mark the areas that are going to be cleared for scrub brush for site improvements. Because we can look at them prior to any trees actually being cut, and we can avoid any down the stream, well, we really didn't think it was going to make a difference and we're going to ask for forgiveness later. I would like to have that out in the open, especially since it's right along the river and it's a very important part of your plan. And as stated, that greenery is going to help keep the noise from traveling across the river. So what's your thoughts on that request?
I don't know if you've given any thought to that, Bob, but that piece.
Good evening. Again, my name is Bob Simons from SMC Management.
Thank you, Bob.
And what we would envision is that we will put the project out to bid. We will probably start in the spring. It will take approximately 16 months to build the project. So that brings us into the spring of 2022. After they do the clearing for the construction, the arborists that we typically hire will come in and they literally look at a tree, decide how much of it has to be limbed, and do the limbing while they're there. They don't typically come in and mark and then come back and then do cutting or removal. So it's usually a live process, and if you have someone at the town that you would like to have come out and join us when we're doing that process, we'd be open to that. But we probably wouldn't anticipate marking everything, then having someone review it, then have the arborist come back in and do the limbing and so forth.
Well, that is something I would like to avoid so that we don't have a problem where trees get cut and then people are up in arms about, well, did that tree really need to come down? We need to sort of work together on this because it's an important part of the waterfront. I see Barbara, did you want to speak?
I guess I want to know whether we put any noise restrictions or time of construction restrictions on the original plan approval. I don't know that I've ever heard us get into this issue.
Well, I brought...
And this project has been before this board, with me sitting here sometimes and me sometimes sitting on that side, many times, and I know that it is an issue, but I recall the final hearing on this project, and there was no one from the public at the public hearing on this matter, which I remember at the time I was sort of surprised at, given the years that this has been and prior hearings. And I don't know that arborists have any certification in noise blockage, given a tree. So I don't even know how you would measure
Well,
this.
I'm working off the statements from the applicant.
No, I understand that, but I think we're raising a new condition here now, and I'm a little confused as to what we're doing. I think we have rules and regulations in regards to construction at sites that if there are complaints about starting too early or going too late, or, you know, Lord knows some of the projects we've been involved with sidewalks and going out on blasting, and that kind of noise interference with neighbors. So, I don't know, I understand the concern and water, but you know what? I live on a hill. And let me tell you, I got echoes where I am. I can hear pretty much everything in the village where I am, so if somebody's doing something down here, I hear it. And you're probably just around the corner enough that you don't hear it.
Yeah, I don't hear it.
Yeah.
Except for the guns.
The cannon. So I appreciate your concern, but as a planning board, if I'm looking at this and I'm looking at another application, I have no idea how I would apply whatever it is we're applying as a requirement for this applicant. I have no idea.
Well, I brought it up because the original patio area is much, much smaller than the new patio area on the revised plan. So you're talking about larger occupancy, more area that's opened up, and I felt it was important to talk about it because people talk about how noise travels across the river all the time.
Well, are we talking about landscape buffer for noise during construction, which is what I thought sounded like you were talking about, mark the trees and come back later? Or are we talking about whether or not we have enough buffer on the plan in light of the fact that there is now a larger outside seating area? Because those are two different things to me.
I think it's the latter.
It's the latter.
Okay,
And it
because
was-
that's not the conversation I'm hearing when you're talking about coming back to take trees down.
That's not what I asked. I asked about, based on the applicant's statement, that the trees were going to be part of the noise suppression for the new patio.
Okay,
I wanted to be sure that we knew what was going to be cut and when it was going to be cut, so we have an opportunity to avoid a bunch of tree cutting that comes back to us later with, well, you know, we're sorry we cut those trees, but now we need forgiveness.
Mr. Chairman.
Dave Pierce had his hand up, so did Collis, Jim, and Kimberly.
my fault,
I'll
sorry.
defer to the applicant.
Okay, let's go to the applicant first, and then we'll bring the board members on.
Well, I just was hoping to, my recollection of the conversation was that Doug had illustrated on the drone shot that we had of the project, and illustrated that behind the hydro building and behind the leasing building, there is a bunch of existing vegetation there. And I think the comment was, there's a lot of trees there between the buildings and the river, which probably will stay. And on the plan that you referred to, right, the intent of the arborist is to go in to make sure that the trees that are there are healthy and thriving so that they will grow fuller and provide more, you know, amenity space that's green and
Good.
all of those, the canopy things that people love so much. And the only other thing that I would point out is that there are 99 units, and whether the patio area that we build with the fireplaces and the pergolas are a larger defined area, it's certainly the same number of residents that are there, and the people that are gonna be outside of their apartment will be outside of their apartment. But I think if you go to any of our properties, you'll see the courtyards that we have, and they really are, they're quiet enjoyment spaces. I mean, it's not like there's an auditorium or a amphitheater of any type, right? I mean, so typically people bring a little Bluetooth so that they can listen to a little music, but I mean, there are not parties per se that you would expect at a college town or something.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Board members, Dave, you had your hand up first.
Yes. These notes about using an arborist were on the plans that were approved originally. This board did not see fit to be concerned about the oversight of the arborist actually doing their job and having an inspection, how, you know, overseeing his professional capacity. And furthermore, yes, the amenities for the residents are slightly larger, but it's my opinion that they don't rise to a point where we need to have extra scrutiny on the professional capability of an arborist.
Thank you. Carlos, I thought you had your hand up.
You know, it's an important issue. When the trees are cut down, you're not bringing them back. It seems to me it's within our purview to take a discuss and consider this issue, and I think we could, and we should. You know, I don't think it's a big ask either. I don't think we're requiring a whole lot from the applicant, certainly not a whole lot of money, not a whole lot of time, I wouldn't think. And I think it's prudent, because like I say, once the trees are cut, they're gone. I mean, you think about the fact that were it not for the fact that this is got an urban exemption from the Shoreline Protection Act, if it were not for that exemption, they would have to identify each and every tree along the shoreline here. Now, I understand if they got the exemption, that's fine, we can live with that. We'll have to live with that. But again, I don't think it's a big ask. I don't think it's a lot of time or a lot of money. Once they take the trees, they're gone.
Kimberly?
I was going to ask if they had a shoreline exemption, but that answered my question.
The Village Commercial District has
Right,
a
they don't
blanket
have
exemption.
to address that, right.
So if I can follow up, what are we asking? Do we want more landscaping?
No, I was asking that, that rather than have it become an issue where we're asking for forgiveness, that they mark trees prior to beginning the cutting of anything on the site. I mean, if they are gonna cut for construction, we'd like to know where they're gonna cut for construction. Jim?
Well, it's a question for Collis, and from my experience with the shoreline, it's, you can cut up to some amount.
Right.
So can't we say if they're gonna cut more than X amount, then they have to go through that process so they can do the normal tree maintenance, but not?
I would imagine perhaps we could say, you can remove them, but even though you're exempt, you still have to comply with the point ranking system that's required under that statute, but that's.
I think we're going overboard on
one
that.
possibility.
Now we're asking for
Well, then
something.
we're in between, and I don't like to be in between. I'd rather be one side or the other.
Karen?
I was just, like, is somebody gonna walk through it and see the trees and say yay or nay? Is that the process, or? what
It would
be?
provide an opportunity. Barbara?
I guess, what is the noise blocking rating for an oak or a 5-year-old oak compared to a 20-year-old oak? Because I have on my property a 20-year-old oak, maybe closer to 30, that's how long I've been there, that's very different than the 60, 80-year-old oak that's on my property. So if we're really concerned about noise shield, maybe, and I'm trying to get my north-south bearings on this, we ask for additional landscaping far enough away, because they're gonna want the view. Remember, we could have them shield the whole thing, but part of the reason they're putting it on the riverside is because they want it on the riverside. I would think that arborvitaes would provide a lot more shield for noise than trees. I mean, I'm just trying to get to, I guess I'm not disagreeing with anything you're saying, I'm just sort of saying, how do we resolve this, given that we don't have the measures that, for what you're trying to do?
Yeah, and Barbara, to respond, I think you're right. I think this is pretty subjective. I mean, there's nothing that says an arborvitae knocks down so many decibels of noise, whereas an oak only knocks down this many. The point is, we're trying to buffer it for sound. And why would you go in and take out trees that provide some level of buffering, depending upon the species, the density, and where they are?
Mr. Chair, could I?
Yeah, go ahead, Joe.
I think it is important to recall, I mean, and most of the board members here were part of this original approval. I don't think we were sitting here saying, hey, we need to have this arborist here so that we can make sure that we're buffering the maximum amount of sound. I don't really think that was a concern. So I don't think we should go too far in the direction of the sound issue, because it was not perceived as an issue as part of the original application. And I think what Mr. Simons here said, it does make sense, is that we have 99 units. And I said this as part of my original testimony when we were here last month. And it was that the areas for congregating are the same on this plan from what was originally approved. We had a congregating area by the smokestack, we had congregating areas between the buildings, we had open greens in other areas, we had the walking path in between the two. So I look at these are improvements, these are amenities for the residents, but they're not going to automatically increase sound or disturbance. As I said, people that want to be outside are going to be outside, whether they have a nice stone bench to sit on, or if they have to pull out their folding chairs and come out with a cooler. So my take is that because the unit density is exactly the same, the buildings are in the exact same location, the amenity spaces are in very similar locations, that we really have a non-material change when it comes to that. And we'll continue to comply with this originally approved plan, with the arborist, with those requirements. The issue I have, and it's not to avoid something, Mr. Chair, and I understand your concerns as well, but to have someone come out and say, so if the arborist says, hey, we're gonna cut this tree because it's damaged, what board member is gonna say, well, I don't know, that one looks like it has real good buffering characteristics, and then, but he's saying, well, but this is a dead tree, it's dead right here, or whatever, I have to take this one. I just feel like there's not gonna be much, that unless the town wanted to hire their own arborist, but I think that there's gonna be not much, we have to kind of rely on the professionals to, you know, to go in, and typically an arborist is not one to want to clear cut either.
No, I understand.
I guess I look at it a little differently. I wouldn't expect the arborist to go in and say, we're gonna take these trees. I would expect him to come in and say, these trees need to be saved. Because in my opinion, as an arborist, they provide sound buffering. So it's a little bit of a,
All right, well,
Different
we are, our concern that we're relaying to you is noise traveling across the river to the neighborhood that's across the street. We would like to make sure that you impress that upon your arborist when they're making decisions, that that is a consideration, that it's important to the board.
I mean, and I'm gonna go out and disagree. I mean, you have a more enticing setting outside. More people are gonna be enticed to go outside. I know that you have 99 units, the same amount of units, but, you know, a person that's, I don't know, I guess on the fence about that, I don't know. But you got an enticing area. You're gonna go out there for it. It's just so true.
Disagree with me or him?
No.
You look-
Good point.
I was trying to figure out where you were going. Kimberly?
I'm a little stuck here. I just don't see the noise thing as being that big of a deal. I mean, we've got like, what, 4, 5, 6 homes across the river. I just don't see and the point to this. But also, so did we require them to bring in an arborist? Because I think we're shooting ourselves in our foot here. Like, the applicant's doing a really good improvement to our buffer on the river by saying we're going to leave a healthy forest and remove the invasive species. They're doing the right thing here, and suddenly we're all quibbling over it. I'm not sure even why this is going in the direction it's going. They're gonna leave a really good product because they want people to buy these houses, they want a forested buffer, they're making a better forest. And none of us have any professional opinion as to whether or not you take out 10 trees or 20 trees, it changes the noise. I just don't see the point. That's my opinion on this.
Other board members? Jim?
Well, we've established, on other projects, we have a sort of a performance standard that if there's excessive noise, we have the right to bring them back in and request some sound buffering. And if we added that as a condition, and it was created, not was, against their representations, we'd have some condition to point to without having to go out and approve trees, because I agree with Kimberly. I don't really want to do that. Yeah, we can add
I
it.
think she agreed with Kimberly.
Yeah. No, we can add a condition that if there's excessive noise, we have the right to
Right.
require them to come back in and we can review noise abatement, or require noise abatement.
I actually wrote one for you to discuss.
Tim, I agree with Jim. We do have some opportunity for recourse if the noise does become an issue. There may be plantings, it may be a fence.
And we do that. We do that in other
Yeah.
projects where there's
Yeah.
uncertainty about future performance
Yeah, I
of
agree.
representations that are made.
I was already going in that direction because I wrote a possible condition for the board to consider on this subject.
And that gets us out of looking at trees.
Without speaking,
Karen and I wanted to go.
Yeah, so you went tree logging.
without speaking in a legalese speak here, I said simply, we make a statement if any issues with noise or other complaints arise from increased outdoor common areas that are not resolved by the project management on site, the board reserves the right to recall the applicant to resolve issues. Does that sound right to board members? You want to respond, Bob?
Well, I guess what I would say to the board is that SMC's desire is to build the finest, first quality projects wherever we go. We have never been called to task by any municipality for any amount of noise anywhere. And if the board felt that it was absolutely necessary to put that language in the approval, then we would not object to it. But I will tell you, we get down a slippery slope of even subjective revisiting of approvals, right? If someone hears a noise and it's not handled quickly by our management or your police force, to have someone suggest that we're gonna be back in front of the planning board, and I don't know if the planning board has ever revoke someone's occupancy of an apartment complex because it was loud. And to be honest with you, there has to be a leap of faith that when we spend $60 million to build a first-class apartment complex, we're gonna be attracting a nice class of people. It's going to be a friendly, I mean, one of the things about this project, and from your perspective, you're looking at 3 apartments. From our perspective, we're thinking about building an apartment community in a neighborhood, right? Our entire organization is thrilled about what it means to be on the river, on the pond, right? We're fighting with DES on how to save the dam because they're threatening to pull the dam out. And I gotta tell you, it's a $500,000 problem for us trying to find out how to build a hydro plant so that they don't tear the dam out so that we have a brook, right? Because it doesn't change the view from the apartments because the brook is still gonna be there. But it's gonna change everything upstream of that if this DES pulls that dam out. So I understand the concern, it's noted. Yes, I would ask you to just trust that we appreciate that. And I would encourage you to go to our website, find our apartment complexes, and see what type of environment we build. And none of them are party central, none of them are catered to the college crowd. None of them are something other than young professionals and people my age or a little bit older who are tired of painting shutters on a 4,000 square foot house. So, I don't know, I understand the concern. I would ask you not to try to put handcuffs on the approval, but, so,
Okay, thank you, sir.
just my thoughts.
Karen?
I think that we probably just need to finesse that language a little bit.
Yeah, I just-
or
this is-
massage it, whatever you want.
Do whatever you want.
You know, I don't know if Jim has any suggestions. He's really good at this stuff.
Well,
It would have to be really bad to draw anybody back in here. But we do hold the door open for ourselves, basically, is all we're doing. I don't think we've ever brought anybody back for something like this that I know of in my time on the
Well,
board.
I understand.
without even a specific condition, wouldn't it be in the board's purview to do that if there was an extreme situation,
not this board, it would be in noise enforcement.
a code enforcement issue?
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Because I know that in other towns, there's been recourses that homeowners could take, and they would have to justify that, and then that would be handled with the municipality. Obviously, you have ordinances that are not gonna allow loud gatherings past a certain hour of the day, but you know what, if somebody across the river can hear somebody talking or throwing a frisbee, is what it is.
That's not a nuisance.
Right.
Jim?
The reason I thought we should put this in, not because I think they're gonna be a problem, but we have waived a public hearing on an issue we've identified as a potential matter that would affect the abutters. And if we don't do anything, I could see abutters saying, wait a minute, that should have been a public hearing.
Right.
So I think it's a defensive protection for the applicant and us to have
Right.
something in there that
Addresses the fact that we negated the public
acknowledge
hearing.
and dealt with it. Now, whatever wording you want to say, it's excessive noise or excessive noise as a result of cutting, tree, too much landscape, too many trees, something that shows we did address that issue, and therefore we did need a public hearing on it.
David?
Question, would the applicant find it acceptable to have a posted curfew hour on use of the outside amenities? 11 o'clock at night, for example. Have you had such conditions in your previous development?
Private property.
Well, I know that we have curfews on the common spaces inside the buildings. I don't know as though we've ever had a curfew on outside spaces on a property, or how we manage that.
All right.
But there are certainly provisions that would protect that with the staff on site and
Does your staff work in the evening hours, Bob?
No.
No. So after 5 o'clock, your staff goes home?
Depends on who the staff is that's on site. On half of our properties, either the property manager, a leasing manager, or the maintenance supervisor lives on site, but
Okay.
it's not a requirement of the
Thank you.
occupation.
Thank you. Any other board members, or we're gonna put this to bed?
Yeah, can I just chime in real quick, Tim?
Please.
You know, I want to build on what Jim said. I was kind of on the fence with waiving the public hearing. You know, I hate waiving any opportunity for the public to have input on anything. You know, we made the decision that they weren't substantive changes. There may be something out there that the public could have brought to this, and they weren't afforded an opportunity to talk. In general, I hate waiving public hearings. They're there for a reason. But we already took action on it. That's not to say we can't recall it and vote on it, but we did that, so I think, you know, requiring a little something extra to make sure we cover that would give me some peace of mind.
So, somebody else got something else they wanna say? Dave?
Yes. Question for our town engineer. Is there a staff in our engineering department or on the planning board, Joanne, who would have the knowledge to effectively override the cutting opinions of an arborist?
No.
Well, there is a.
Because we're giving great power to whoever this person's gonna be.
There is a condition that's attached to this approval for site inspections as the project is being constructed. And typically for a project this size, it would be a third-party engineering company. So we could
Well,
find
we're-
someone.
Bottom line to me, Mr. Chair, we're going down a path we shouldn't in trying to control the growth and for sound death and sound mitigation.
Doug had his hand up for you.
That's okay.
Doug?
One point, remembering when we were having these discussions, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, because everybody was at the same meetings I was, but the arborist and that requirement was specifically related to some, I don't know if even if they were direct abutters, but someone was saying, I don't want to look at that big building. So I want some vegetation to break up the facade of the building. It was never discussed about that those trees or canopy would provide, you know, the optimum amount of sound buffering. It was always a visual buffer,
Okay,
I believe, so I think that's important to know.
okay.
I
Karen?
think the way we go is to, you know, work with this language and have a condition on it. I think that makes the most sense.
All right, so why don't we just kind of sit on that for a few minutes, and we'll come up with something hopefully by the end of the hearing. Joanne, anybody have any other questions? Because I have one other question for one of the existing conditions, Joanne. On page 8, number 15,
Yes.
you have a note in here for general plan conformance before a CO is issued. Don't we generally require some sort of an as-built drawing for plans that they were actually built in conformance with the plan, not a general plan conformance statement?
Which number are you looking at?
Number 15 on page 8. 3 words after the word factory street work.
Yes.
I always thought in the past we asked for a certified as-built of the site.
And that's already required.
That is required.
Yes, so we don't need it, to put it again.
So we don't have to discuss it tonight.
No,
It's somewhere in the regulations that a certified
correct.
as-built is required.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll take your word for it.
16, can we change Board of Selectmen to Select Board?
These are conditions that are currently approved.
Oh, sorry.
These are
Right,
old
yeah. I
conditions.
don't wanna
They're
make
they're
changes.
closed.
I just put them there so that they would continue over to this being the final approval, it would
Right,
continue over.
she just listed, this is the new stuff. This
Gotcha.
is the current stuff.
Gotcha.
All right, well, I don't have anything else to discuss tonight. Does anybody else have anything else to discuss tonight?
No, I'm gonna move that we include a condition that we reserve the right to recall the applicant if the outdoor facilities create excessive noise, to consider further sound mitigation.
So that'd be number 7 under the new conditions?
Correct.
Would you consider a sunset provision on that?
No.
Why?
I mean, it's gonna be forever?
Yeah.
So, do we have properties that we come back 20 years later and say, oh, you've cut too many trees?
No, this isn't related to trees, this is related to performance. When we have performance standards and any site plan approval, it's in place until site plan changes. They don't sunset. I've never heard of a sunset on a site plan condition.
Jim, would you repeat that condition?
Oh,
you repeat
what,
the
the thing I said?
Yeah.
Oh, God. We reserve the power to recall the applicant,
Excessive noise.
if the, excess noise, oh, shoot.
If the
You
outdoor
said,
spaces,
if you, outdoor space generates excessive
Excessive noise,
noise,
to consider
sound
for-
sound
To
mitigation.
consider further sound mitigation.
Okay.
I guess it's nebulous without it being an invitation to people to complain too much.
So how do we, Joanne, what is the procedure for adding a condition that a board member can do? We have to have a straw vote among board members to see if it passes?
No,
this-
I'm gonna make a motion that we,
Oh, do it in a form of a motion,
yeah,
okay.
we approve
1 through 6.
1 through 6 plus 7, except that I would change the wording on number 1. You just quoted the fire department, that it, you take out the word recommend. The approval is site and condition specific, particularly as to the waiver of the driveway grade. I would add that clause. It does not constitute a reference or standard for any of the site.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
Does everybody, what is Tower 1? Is that the building or is that a fire truck?
That's a fire truck.
Do we need to put the word fire truck in there? Because I didn't understand that sentence.
I think they're relating to that specific vehicle because of
Yeah,
the size of that class.
Well,
of vehicle.
I think
that
we
a
should change,
specific
that's a good
size?
point, to accessible to fire trucks equivalent to the current Tower 1.
All fire vehicles.
All fire.
Yes, all
All,
fire.
that wouldn't take in anything they would.
The biggie, so.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Is the main engine included in that, Eric? Or was that just, is Tower 1 the main engine?
Tower 1 was the most, yeah.
That's the long.
But the ladder truck, is that able to?
That is the
fit?
ladder
That is the
truck.
ladder truck.
Okay, I just want to make
So
sure.
we say to fire trucks, because, 20 years from now,
It
people
takes
are gonna say,
in-
what are you talking about?
fire vehicles.
We need a new station then, too.
Fire apparatus.
Hush.
Fire apparatus.
That's in the CIP report.
Thank you.
Well, now, I don't like that, Jim. I'll tell you why. Because if they buy a truck that's too big to fit into
Yeah.
the project, now we're gonna punish the developers.
so,
I think
okay.
we should leave it, the fire department stated Tower 1, I think we should leave it alone.
Well,
I disagree, because what if they come up with a new truck that's bigger than Tower 1? And it
Well,
can't
they
fit
can
in.
replace
It
Tower
would be
1.
hard to do that.
Yeah.
Tower 1 is a very large fire truck.
I've seen it.
Vehicles have what they call wheelbase, the WB vehicle, it describes a vehicle, so we can describe it in general terms as the power truck. Would fit in that category of vehicles, you know what I'm talking about, right?
Fire department chose this wording, I'd like to leave it
But
alone.
they're not the planning board, we are. They are fire, so I think it's fair for us to take that and put it into a term that would be understandable to somebody like me who's not a firefighter. I have no idea what Tower 1
And
is.
again, I think Doug can figure out what wheelbase designation that is, and we'll just put it in there.
Or
Bob, would you like to
The word
speak?
fire truck? Didn't know what that meant.
I would, I can appreciate where you're coming from. I think that the fire department determined the grades and the curves and the geometry that has been submitted by Dubay meets their requirements. And regardless of how many vehicles they will ever buy, the geometry that they have right now meets what they require. And I would just ask that you respect that and
True.
not worry about what they plan to drive over it anymore. Doesn't matter.
All right,
That's true, they approved it knowing they've got this ladder.
So do
Okay.
we even need 1 and 2 since they were conditions of the waiver?
But we still need one, for the reason I said earlier, but
So do you need 2, given that it was a condition of the waiver?
I think we do, and we're just talking about, you know, do we use Tower 1 or do we use a fire vehicle, or do we,
You could just,
I would say.
you could describe Tower 1 as the ladder truck in the statement and leave it at that.
That's fine.
Well, keep in mind, excuse me, I think we're missing one part on this, is that when this statement is talking about Tower 1 with access to Factory Street, so they're not questioning anything about the emergency access
Right.
from East Union. They're just saying, you know, right now, Tower 1 can zip right in on Factory Street because it's flat. I think he's saying if there was for some reason that we were proposed to, hey, we're gonna eliminate Factory Street because we don't like that entrance and we're gonna come solely in on East Union, that would be an issue because
Okay.
he had comfort with Factory Street being the main access.
Okay.
What does that mean? Then, what is the last clause? Any waivers of the East Union Street? Does that mean our grade?
I think they're stating that the grades on Factory Street are accessible at this time, and if they change the grades in any way, shape, or form that didn't allow the truck to get in, then
They wouldn't support the waiver
it wouldn't
of the
support the waiver
grade.
for the other one.
But,
correct.
But I don't think the applicant wants to say that, because would that let us revoke their approval, because suddenly the fire truck
Because-
can't get in?
Because in the original approval, there was a lot of discussion about the possibility in the future, however many years from now, East Union would become the main access because there may be some impediments to using Factory any longer because of further traffic on Main. And that was certainly a big part of the discussion. So I think he's trying to say that Factory needs to be the main access.
There's two sentences. I don't want to beat this. One is, Factory Street has to remain accessible. Okay, that's fair. But then the second sentence, if changes to Factory Street impede access by Tower 1, any waivers of the East Union Street access are to be terminated. Well, that's the waiver for the driveway.
Yeah.
Well, they don't want that. You don't want that to be happen, so I don't.
You know,
I just don't know, I don't know how we would do that.
Barbara?
why do we have it? The approval is the approval. Our approvals are as of the condition now. If the fire department buys a ladder truck that's 3 times bigger, are we gonna go to St. A's and tell them you have to redo the entrance again? Which, they had to keep the old one because the tower truck couldn't go through the new entrance. So are we gonna say, now you have to redo that? We start putting these kind of conditions in plans. If approval is as of now, the private landowner is responsible for maintaining and providing access, and we don't go pulling people back in because we change our operation. We can't do that. I don't think we can do that. We've granted a waiver for the grade, for the driveway grade, which was really the only change to this plan, right? That, from an access standpoint, that's all we're talking about, is when you guys went to do,
Well, and obviously we all know this, but I think it does make a difference that it was nothing that we changed. It was changed by the town.
Yeah, we got that.
Right. But,
but that's, it's not because they came in here for a site plan change. They were working on their overall site and they had to change it because of the East Union. So I don't even know, given that we granted them the waiver for the driveway grade, I don't even know why this is in here.
Number, you're referring to condition number 2.
Yeah,
Yes, I agree with you, Barbara.
finally, somebody agrees with me on something today.
Is that enthusiastic?
Condition 2 is essentially a condition upon the town that we're never gonna redesign Factory Street to an unacceptable standard for whatever is down the road on Factory Street. So, no, it's an inappropriate condition.
What is your motion?
He added a condition in regards to the,
Yeah, no,
Well-
but he was making a motion overall about all the.
Well, I was incorporating the fire
Yeah.
department. I think we need number 1.
But whether or not we agree with those 2 conditions, those was a deal that was struck between the fire department and the applicant. And if we're gonna back that out of there, that's gonna give them trouble with the fire department, in my opinion.
Well,
Who
so,
cares if it's in there? It's never gonna be enforced anyway.
I've made a motion to approve 1 through 6 with
I'll
a
second.
condition.
Okay, we have a motion.
The only discussion was Tower 1, but we've agreed to leave Tower 1.
So Jim made a motion. Who seconded it?
We didn't second it, because
Okay, we didn't finish it yet.
we didn't finish it. So what is
One-
the motion?
We
Wait,
added the word fire
1
truck.
through 6 plus number
Plus, no,
7.
adding number
Plus the
7.
one I added.
Okay.
Okay, I'll second it.
And 1 through 6,
But we're
Page
taking out,
7,
we're
page
taking
7.
out the word recommend in number 1, because it doesn't make sense as written. That was what the fire department put in as a verb, but we don't want the verb recommend.
so the DPW conditions on page 6 were included in the new conditions we're voting on tonight? Third-party review, that's in there. Escrow account is in there. And drainage maintenance
Yeah.
agreement's in there. Okay. So, there's a motion on the floor to approve conditions 1 through 6, which are new conditions, and adding number 7. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Barbara opposes, anybody
No.
else opposed?
No, no.
What was your vote, Dave?
I already stated that number 2 is unacceptable, so no, I don't approve the motion.
So Dave does not approve. Any abstaining?
Yes.
All right, so can you count the vote? We had 2 noes.
Yeah, it's 5 to 2.
Okay.
David and Bob
So the
were
motion
against.
passes 5 to 2. Any other thing to deal with prior to a motion for an approval, Joanne?
We just approved.
We just did
That was
We just approved you didn't make a motion to approve.
Oh.
Yeah, it's done.
Well, okay, you want me to amend my motion to
Said
say
motion to
I
approve
approve
the
with the following conditions as amended?
There you go.
I think you did say that at the beginning.
I missed that part, because I write that stuff down.
So do we need to,
I wrote motion to approve new conditions. I didn't write.
Well, okay,
approve.
I'm gonna make a motion then that we approve the project with the conditions we just approved.
Yeah, what I wrote that you said was that you approved the amended site plan with the conditions as follows, and it was that 6 plus 7.
All right, then we
But
don't have.
also in
we-
the staff report, it includes the previous conditions as
Good,
well.
well, we don't need
That's
another
what I
vote. She heard it that I didn't. It's all good.
all right.
Anything else? We're done with this application? Yes? Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
So Joanne, what's our next item on the agenda?
The next item on the agenda is the public hearing for the proposed zoning changes.
Okay. So what is our recommended procedure here for this from you? Because I don't know exactly how to handle this. Barbara, can you help me out?
So if I could just say one thing. So everything except for the solar ordinance was heard at the last hearing. Phil had an issue because the introduction to the meeting said something about at the next hearing. So he felt that all of those other items needed to be republished and made, available to the public for a second hearing. So that's why they're there.
Okay.
The only thing new is the rewrite of the solar ordinance.
It starts on page,
I have one other, if you look on page 29, no, I'm sorry, not 29. Let me just find it here.
Thank you, Eric. You can stick, you don't need to stick around for this
Thanks,
stuff.
Erin.
Night, Eric. Nice
If you
to
look
see
on
you.
page 33, under the last item, number 13, under H,
What page?
Page
33. H13, it says solar energy systems. And then if, on the far right, it says section 2.4. I just removed all
Section
of,
5.24.
I'm sorry, 5.24. I removed all of the permitted or special exception from this because there's another table within the solar
Oh, okay,
ordinance
so
that
that's
lays
what you
that
did.
all out.
Okay.
But I didn't want to not include something that at least referred to it and referred you to the section because someone might just pass over it and say, oh, they don't have one.
Right, okay.
And the same is, holds true on page 37, under A, 8,
Yep.
and that's for an accessory solar. So that's the only change to that section. There's 2 different copies in here of the solar ordinance. The first one starts on, well, now it goes back to page 1. It starts at the very top, 5.24.1 purpose, and that's the redlined copy. It's kind of confusing to follow that along because we started with something so different that most of it is crossed out. So I would suggest that you move on to page 1 again. It's the same exact document, although I eliminated the red lines. It might just be easier for you to read it
So you
that way.
cleaned it all up and got rid of all the red lines?
Yeah.
Okay. Should we all take a minute and look at it before we pose a vote on it?
Yeah, I think you definitely need to read it over. I don't know if you've had a chance or.
So just so people know, after the meeting, to the public hearing, I took a look at the things, and Jim, I know you asked to look at it, I completely forgot to email it to you.
David
David
looked at it.
gave a lot of input, and had brought it in, and so I came in one day and went through it actually with Patty. Joanne was out, and we pulled things out of what David had found and another ordinance. We sort of changed it to the SES system, the solar energy system, because that seemed to be more consistent with what was happening with the industry, so it became consistent reference throughout it, because we were sort of bouncing back and forth between the terminology. Some of this is actually from Bedford is instituting this ordinance this year, so some of it was from there, but the surprising thing about Bedford's ordinance was they went to implement it, but they didn't have anything about the posting of some sort of security for removal or demolition, so they're doing it, you know, there's really 2 purposes. One, to give building and staff some guidelines to know what to do when these requests come in, and the other thing is so if we get a large scale or something out of the ordinary, that we can, if it's deemed warranted, request some sort of security for demolition if it's not used as we do now for towers. So after taking a look at it, I hope that you find that it's more consistent. It certainly doesn't go into all the areas and pockets that some of the other ones we were looking at that were way too detailed and out there. And I think this will be a tool that can be used by staff in going forward with any applications that come in.
I did pass it along to Mark, the building inspector, and he wrote back and said that he thought it would work well with the building code, and he provided me, I believe this is in your packet, informational bulletin
Right.
for solar installations, and he said it would work well with this document as well as the building code, so he was fine with everything.
So Joanne, under your decommissioning 5.24.4, 5.24.4.1, the owner applicant may be required to provide a performance bond
Yes.
determined by the planning board. So this is going to be a planning board decision on who requires bonds, only be a planning board decision?
Yes.
And what's going to be made the determining factor on that? The size, the use, what's going to determine it?
It's basically the size. I mean, certainly you wouldn't recommend a homeowner.
Well, that's where I'm going with this
Yeah,
question.
it would be more of a commercial
Okay,
project.
I just wanted to know, so the word may leaves the planning board, leaves the regulation leeway for the planning board to decide or not to decide.
Correct, because the residential projects would not.
Because don't you hate that word,
come before
Jim,
you.
may?
I don't mind giving you some discretion.
Okay. Or is it shall you hate?
Well, I don't want,
Shall
don't
No, we
confuse.
talked about
Yeah,
shall.
shall and may are
That
different
forces
words.
Right.
Well, he
Yeah.
doesn't like it in this context, it's not that he doesn't like the word shall.
No, he doesn't really.
I don't like the word shall, 'cause
You
it-
don't like the word shall?
right, 'cause you don't have any wiggle room.
He's a lawyer, he wants wiggle.
Is there,
I want no wiggle room.
Life is-
would we have a waiver process for that? Only because, what if someone decommissions their commercial solar farm because suddenly the rates aren't favorable, and they want to decommission it until the rates are favorable again. They just want to sort of unplug it from the system and plug it in a couple of years. I'm curious to know, on what grounds are we going to decide someone has to take it down after 12 months?
You know, Tim, this is, we talked about this.
I know we talked about
because-
it.
No, we talked about it, I'm talking about when we went through the drafting of this. The reality is, the abandonment of any site, that issue is problematic. And absent getting into some very detailed and broad requirements for many parts of our ordinance, including the tower, there is a certain reliance on notification, and there may or may not be a requirement to do anything.
Okay.
So, I mean, I think part of the thing we were trying to address was building indicated that they really didn't have any guidance for this, so this is gonna provide that. And for big plans, it will give us some standards so applicants know what to deal with. And it provides for wiggle room in regards to if we get a large application, what to do. And I agree that the noticing and the decommissioning is an issue. I mean, you know, we all drive by the site on 114, quite frankly. Do any of us know whether it's actually generating any electricity on that given day or whether they've decommissioned it? The answer is no. I suspect it's something at some point that's going to require a bigger answer than a planning board for these systems that are selling electricity and what kind of notification goes out. But I'm not sure at this time for the ordinance that it was necessary or we could do it.
Jim?
I think the word presumed in section 5.2.4 gives some wiggle room. You can have a presumption that can be rebutted. So by using that verb, it leaves the door open for
Okay.
your situation. So I'm
Okay.
comfortable with it.
Good, thank you.
I had a question, and I think I know the answer, but the table of uses has accessory uses and principal uses. But I guess you address it by having not applicable, because you're not going to have a roof mounted as a principal use, so it's,
Right.
that's a fair distinction, if that's what you were
Yeah.
intending. Okay. I'm good, well, we have to,
Any more discussion on the proposed zoning amendment before our motion is obviously being ready to be made?
we open the public hearing?
Okay, we can do that. Sometimes I'm in a little too much of a hurry for my own good.
Can I just have an observation? It's like every time you look at these, something else seems to pop up. On page one. halfway
Which
down-
page one?
The first page one, under purpose. Halfway down, it says the SES with a footprint of less than 1,000 to 1,700. Why is there a range there? I don't understand. I mean, I understand, we talk about more than 1,750, good, okay.
Is that a typo? It just should be less than 1,750?
Yeah, I
Yeah, I
think
think
so.
so.
I think so. Or is there someplace when, you know, I think,
Oh, it should say of less than 1,000 or no more than 1,750.
Well, wait a minute, no,
Yeah,
that doesn't
no.
make sense.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
it
should be
doesn't.
less than the 1750.
I think it's just less than 1,750, because we got more than 1,750 in the next bullet.
Oh, which one are you looking at? Small scale?
Yes, small scale.
Yeah.
Footprint of less than 1,000 to a maximum of 1,750.
No, that makes no sense.
No, it doesn't, because if it's.
You don't need the bottom,
Right.
you don't need the bottom limit. It's
If
just
it's-
a
if it's
system
less than
up to
1,000.
1750.
Oh, I
If
see
it's
what
less
you're
than
talking
1,000,
about.
it's certainly
Yep.
less than 1,750.
Sure. Less
Well,
than
so that's a
1,750.
typographical error and not a substantive change.
Okay.
Any more discussion before I open the public hearing? Seeing none, I'll open the public hearing. There's no one here in the audience to talk about public hearings, so I'm going to close the public hearing.
Chair, I move that we approve that all these zoning amendments may be placed on the warrant with the indication, well, there are recommendations, so we don't have to say we approve, but there are.
Right. Now, I have not sent this over to the
Second.
town attorney yet. I'm going to give it
Barbara, you
to
seconded?
Derek once you've all approved it, just to make sure there's nothing crazy that we can't go forward with. But I didn't want to send it and then have things changed and,
It's just if it changes, you can't do it within our.
Right.
For the hearing,
right.
other than non-substantive corrections.
So is this subject to the town administrator's approval,
Town attorney's approval.
town attorney's approval?
Well, no, he can
Well,
give
not his approval,
recommendations,
but
he
his
doesn't tell us what to
recommendation,
do. If he wants to review it, but right now, we've made an action.
Right. I didn't mean to say.
And should the town
recommendation.
attorney find a serious flaw, what's our remedy?
You can come back
Pull
to
it.
us and we can pull it, yeah.
Okay.
You have another meeting on the 27th of this month.
Okay.
It's true.
And your last hearing can only be, the date has to be held by the 31st.
Well, I don't
Perfect.
think we're gonna need another hearing.
No, I
The
don't
only
think
issue
so
would be
either.
if we say something or not,
Right.
because we get some opinion that it's illegal, and causing more problems than.
You'd have to notice the hearing. Do we have time to notice the hearing
Notice the hearing for
The
what?
20th is the date of the notice.
for a zoning hearing?
Yep.
What would we need another zoning?
Well,
hearing
if
for?
the esteemed attorney comes back and has some issues.
Well, maybe he has a change in the wording or something. We do have enough time, I checked.
All right, whatever, okay.
Okay, so there's a motion to approve the 2022 zoning amendments as presented and place on the 22 warrant, made by Jim and seconded by Barbara. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? It passes.
Thank you for doing this, Barbara and David.
Well, John, thank you. You gave us a Division of Safety Fire Marshal this just information regarding to this photovoltaic, just for us for reading purposes?
It just had to do with the solar. As I explained, Mark, the building inspector,
All right. As long
looked
as
it over and gave
it's
that
not
to me for information.
germane to tonight's discussion.
Well, we've gone past it all.
Right, we don't, yes, we can just go home and do it.
Motion to adjourn?
Give me a minute.
Always in a hurry.
I asked about the site plan for the Z1 Express at the end of the back road. Did you have a chance to,
No, I have not.
okay, we'll look at it another meeting then.
Okay,
Put it on the agenda for another meeting.
I will.
Those shrubs are, might be tall.
So if there's no other,
The dome is my idea.
Yes, it is.
if there's no other business for tonight,
Make a motion.
I made the motion to adjourn.
well,
Second,
sounds good.
we don't know what to do with it when Phil's not here to make it. That's
Because he's usually made it like 15 minutes ago.
We'll never know.
Okay, motion by Karen, second by Barbara. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, abstentions, meeting is over. Thank you very much. Thank you.